That's
the same.
Get it out.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. That makes me feel crappy. So I was telling them, in a 9-doctor practice, implementing something is difficult. When I can't implement something that small, that simple, with me reminding you every single day for 2 days, and I've explained the why and what we're trying to accomplish with it, which is increase capture rate, have patients understand what they're getting, not call back to say, what did I just pay for? In the opticians training, so that they're all using the same language too, right out front. So the doctors and everybody's using the same language to describe the lenses. Those are all really important, right? And so I've explained all that. And so
Hello and welcome to the Chris Wolfe Podcast on iCode Media. Today I had a great conversation with Dr. Laurie Sorrenson. We discussed how to look at our systems for our team and for the growth of our practice. So we talked about CFOs, CEOs, COOs, and thinking about how do we empower those people in our practices to help our practices achieve a higher level. So please enjoy our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education, for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Hello, dedicated optometrists. Are you looking for a way to support your patient's vision and overall eye health? Let me introduce you to Vision Edge Pro, a visual performance supplement that stands out in our profession. Vision Edge Pro contains a balanced blend of mesozeaxanthine, lutein, and zeaxanthine in a 10-10-2 ratio. This combination has been scientifically shown to increase macular pigment density, which enhances visual performance, including contrast sensitivity and vision in glare situations. Additionally, Vision Edge Pro provides 300 milligrams of DHA and EPA, fulfilling the daily requirements for omega-3s as recognized by the leading health organizations. This ensures your patients receive the essential nutrients their eyes need for optimal health. Whether it's for everyday screen use, night driving, or enjoying the outdoors, Vision Edge Pro supports your patients in seeing their best. Recommend Vision Edge Pro for your patients today and help them achieve clearer, healthier vision. Contact your local MacuHealth representative for more details. Vision Edge Pro, because your patients deserve the best in eye health. Go to MacuHealth.com and use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout for special discounts.
I can hear fine, and I asked him if he would go get tested, and he said, sure, if you get tested. I'm like, okay, we'll get tested. So we get tested. I'm in the top 5% of my age group for hearing, by the way, and so that means he knows because I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And he's wearing hearing aids now, so...
You know, I have a lot of guys that are like really active, like seemingly younger, older men. You know what I mean? Like your husband.
Like Joel.
Yeah, and their hearing goes down. Was he resistant to getting hearing aids?
So he is, and his brain is saying, I don't want to be that guy that refuses to admit that I need help. But man, he is the guy admitting he needs help is really hard. So he's pushed back and forth with his brain. I feel it. Yeah, and it's not been an easy thing for him. Fortunately, they're so subtle. Nobody ever sees them. Like,
Yeah.
they look like the back of the temple of the sunglasses. So you don't even, if you see it, you just like don't even pay attention. And then the wire is so, if he wears his hair just a little bit longer, you wouldn't even see that. So yeah, they're so subtle now.
It's interesting you bring up the point you just made, actually, which kind of leads us right into the conversation that I was going to have, is he's such a guy that he won't ask for help. He won't admit that he needs help. And I think that's, one of the things, so if I'm going to set this conversation up a little bit, you sat down, it was probably a month ago now, about how do we understand what roles we need help with in our practice and what other kind of advisors or CEOs we need in our practice. And I've said this before, I don't fully understand the nature of corporate entities. In fact, if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, this is the God's honest truth, if you would have said C-suite a year and a half ago to me, I'd have no idea what you're talking about. I'd just beyond me. It's just, and even the corporate politics of like, well, so-and-so reports to such and such. And we had one of those announcements recently, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to know, like, who can help me in this situation. And so why that was interesting to me is, one, I think a lot of us as practice owners don't know who we need when we need them. So I think from a business standpoint, I think, we may be at a crossroads. I don't know. But I also look to you, Laurie, because my goal as a practice owner is not to have 20 different practices. I don't want a whole bunch of locations. I want one location. I don't want to take over the world, but I want a location that allows us to take care of patients the way I think that they deserve to be taken care of. Not saying you can't do that in 20 locations, just not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so then you kind of look at, all right, well, how do I transition from where we are right now, which is a really, relatively successful, independent practice with basically 2 doctors. How do we go from 2 doctors to 8 doctors to, tripling or quadrupling our revenue? I don't know. I need other people. I need other people involved. And I think the same thing can be said with iCode. It's like, I know where we're really good. I know where I could need some help. But how do I know the next person that I need to hire within my practice to take the practice to the next level? And so you kind of struck a chord with what you shared, and that's kind of what I want to dive into. Is, when you think about corporate organizations, we can run our businesses, our independent businesses, like those corporations may run, and get some of the insight from other experts that do other things. So, and that's the big setup.
Okay.
Am I understanding this right? Tell me a little bit about what I need to know about that.
So what's interesting is I never heard the word C-suite either until a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when Nick and Kling and Aaron Warner were setting up Business Law Optometric 2.0. And they wanted me to do the C-suite and leadership discussion. And I was like, what's a C-suite? I don't know what a C-suite is. And I just thought, I said, are you guys sure you want me to do it? Because, as I've shared with you, I didn't even have a manager until I was in the new building. I think we were $3.5 million.
I don't have a manager right now either. I don't.
Yeah. And so my history is I was 10 years with LensCrafters. So before I opened my private practice. And I had a manager there because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. Well, I felt like I managed the manager.
That happened to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was very little she did without me, and she didn't see patients hardly at all. So she wasn't creating any money for me. And for me, now I know better, but now it's like every staff person has to create money, which was probably true in that practice at the time. I did have one of the larger LensCrafters practices in the country by the time I left. But that's when I said, I'm not ever having a manager again. Like, that was a waste of money is the way I looked at it, right? So that's one reason why I did it for so long. And I used a weird system called the matrix method that was super popular in business I don't know how many years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And I still kind of run the practice somewhat that way, which is here's all the different parts of your office, whether it's front desk, optical, tax, all that stuff. And here's the functions within, whether it's marketing and all these different things. And people run inside those little boxes. I still have it. I still have it from many, many years ago. And I realize I still run it a lot that way, but I had two women, one who had been with me a really, really, really long time, and the other one who had really stepped up and done a lot of things that was management and that I could rely on. And she was an independent thinker, not somebody I had to manage every minute. I think that was a big thing. So the two of them, I made both of them manager at the same time. I didn't even call them manager for a little while, but within about 6 months, I started calling them managers. And so they co-managed for a while. And then during COVID, one of them had some mental health issues, and the other one took over, who's the one with the most experience. And she has just been incredible. So I would say she's probably not your typical manager. She's a very peaceful personality, which is probably good for someone like me, right? She's probably the most well-liked person in the office. Like, she's just super personable. I just kind of look at our organization like, I feel like we're just flatter than a lot of offices. Yeah, I think you can run a practice great and have this hierarchy. I talk to doctors all the time, and they have a bigger practice, and they'll have the main COO. Then they have a manager for the optical in this practice, and they have a manager for an optical in that practice, and they have a manager for the techs in this practice, and they have a tech lead in this practice, and then all that kind of stuff. And I just think it's not maybe if that's more locations, that's probably more important too.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. But I've also made some mistakes with leadership. So I created a position of leadership in the optical about 3 years ago, maybe. I think it was about 3 years ago. It was a bad move.
Sure.
The person who was super helpful, taking care of everybody, did several different little things for me and did some operations and stuff. Once she had a position of authority, it was not good. She caused a lot of resentment with the staff. She actually had some health problems, but it didn't work at all. It did not work at all. So at this point in time, our situation is, it's me. I consider myself a CEO, which if you look at the definition of a CEO, it's more the big picture kind of stuff.
Well, so let's pause there, because can you actually give me, because I want to hit on that, because obviously we wear a lot of hats. But sometimes even just recognizing the hats we wear can be helpful in terms of clarifying, I am good at this role, or I need somebody in that role. So take a step back, and what's your view of a CEO?
So I actually have a slide in Boo 2.0 that says it's not my idea of what a CEO is, it's what is out there in the world and what they say a CEO is. So I could pull that up and we could share that too.
We can share it, actually. So those who are listening, we'll describe what's on the slide. Those who are watching on YouTube will obviously get to see it. So can you share your screen?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me go pull it. I was going to pull it up before I got on here, and I didn't do it, but
that
won't take me long. It won't take me long. 2.0 with no videos. This is it. Okay. And so there's one slide that says what a CEO is. What was shocking to me was, this is not the right one. Why didn't
as you pull it up, I'm gonna take a step back, because so Laurie's gonna pull up a slide presentation just so she can use some visuals here. And what she's referring to is BOO as Business of Optometry, which is man, Laurie, it must have been 5 or 6 years ago where we had the first Business of Optometry through Vision Source, and you and Nick kind of dived into 2018, yeah. And you and Nick dived into kind of cash flow and understanding your business from a profit standpoint, and then also from a people standpoint. You really kind of hit home on the people standpoint, and that has now evolved into sort of this ongoing every quarter or so. You guys do Business Optometry 1.0, and now 2.0. And I think what you're going to be referring to is largely from 2.0. I think about, yeah. And so as a really good resource from, if you're a Vision Source member, it's a great resource to really think about your business in sort of a number of different ways that can help you refine your business. So I set all that up to say that Laurie's been doing this for a number of years, and I've been humbled to kind of one, get to know Laurie for that period of time, and also just learn from her. And also I'll say again, this is sort of an introduction, but if you don't know Laurie, she's really passionate about what she does, and obviously she's got a kind of a long history in the profession in a lot of different realms: independent practice, corporate practice, and actually as a leaseholder in a corporate practice. And but the passion she brings to what she's doing and trying to help people, if you don't know, I mean, she helped thousands of us on a daily and hourly basis during COVID, kind of get through just the massive amounts of information that we were given, and it put us way ahead of a lot of our peers from a Vision Source standpoint. But then even just having the relationship with Laurie during that period of time to help people through where otherwise it would have been a huge challenge. So anyway, I think that should have given you enough time, Laurie, to pull this up. But that's I say all that to say thank you. I don't say you before, but thanks for everything you do.
That's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So these are just some slides from Boot 2.0, but I talk about it typically in a optometric practice. You usually think of maximum of 3 roles like this, although you can have team leads and all that kind of stuff. But in the leadership roles, you have the CEO who's managing the company's overall operations, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Chief financial officer and the chief operating officer. So when I did some more research. Oh shoot, it's not moving forward. Dadgummit. Let's go. Nope. I don't know. I'm used to Zoom, and this is not.
Yeah, it's a little different than Zoom.
It is.
Pull this up myself. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Okay. I don't know why it's not moving forward when I click it.
Yeah. And what slide is it that you like to start from? Yeah, there you go. All right, let me see if I can share this.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can share it. I got it.
Okay, good. I guess it was good we recorded it so you can edit all this out, right?
Yeah. There we go. All right, cool.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right.
So, I was going to go to the next slide, actually. The most common, and I think most doctors consider themselves the CEO. Now, if you're one of those guys, especially like in a big old practice, maybe you are in charge of the operations in the practice or the marketing or the optical or something like that, and you want to hire a CEO to manage all the other critical areas. I could see doing that. I don't know too many doctors that are like that, but I could see that happening. If you go to the next slide, I think it shows what the responsibilities are. So this is when I did research on what it says. It says a CEO delegates and directs agendas, drives the office culture, drives profitability, manages the structure, mentors, and communicates with partners. And there's no question that is very much my role. Very much. Now, office culture now is also my son. He has driven the office culture a lot because he kind of runs most of the office meetings now. He just has a much more, I don't know how to describe it, playful personality, probably is the best way to say it. He's hired 35 of our employees now over the last 4 years since he started hiring during COVID. So he knows these people, and he's just funny and fun. And so I think our office, I always said fun is important, but it's fun just to be around him and be in a meeting that he's running. So I'd say he's driving office culture too, and he's also doing some CEO stuff. If you'll go to the next slide. So CFOs, I don't think some people do hire CFOs. I think you can also outsource those. That's something, we talk about, you were talking about who should I hire, right? And a lot of that has to do with money, right? ODs are notoriously cheap, right?
Yes. Yes.
So hiring or outsourcing some things, like I have 2 different financial consultants. One's just an accountant. One is a completely separate, not cheap financial consultant.
CooperVision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today. We've been partnering with EssilorLuxottica 360 for a while now, and it helps us in 3 areas. First, they use social media campaigns to highlight products that we believe in and prescribe to our patients, and they deliver those patients back to our practice. Second, EssilorLuxottica 360 enhances our patient experience through staff training tools to help us simplify and streamline the way we communicate about our products and services. Lastly, but for my practice most importantly, it helps us make good business decisions related to our optical offerings. We will systematically and objectively analyze what our patients are purchasing and what they like, and removing products that our patients are not really using or not really drawn to. This, along with additional rebates and immediate savings, helps us continue to deliver high-quality products and services to our patients and keeps our practice resilient. Check out EssilorLuxottica 360 for yourself by visiting EssilorLuxottica360.com.
So you had made a comment about you have your CPA and then you have your financial advisor. And one of the things that I will be doing next week, which will actually play after we will have happened before this podcast gets released, but is basically all about like hiring your financial dream team. And, it includes attorneys, CPAs, other financial advisors. So tell me a little bit about what your, not your CPA, or maybe you do want to talk about what does your CPA do, but the other financial advisor is interesting to me. Tell me about what they do for you specifically.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It was recommended to me by another Vision Source administrator, actually, years ago. It was in a different group. It wasn't in a Vision Source group, and he brought up this guy. And I met with him. It was right before COVID, talked to him, and went through a few things, and he gave me a recommendation on doing something with my building that ended up saving me 5 figures in taxes. Like, incredible. That my accountant didn't tell me about. That I used to have a partner in the building that my partner, who does all kinds of buildings, didn't know. And so he saved me huge amounts of money, but then COVID hit and I was scared to spend any money, so I didn't hire him right away. But as soon as I realized I was coming out of it, not only coming out of COVID well, with our practice and how fast we were growing, I hired him back. He thought he'd lost me forever. I was like, no, I just didn't want to spend money until I knew that I was going to have a practice in 6 months. And it's an interesting thing. He's super complicated. So half of what he tells me, more than half probably, I don't even understand what he's talking about. But he caught when my accounts receivables had ticked up, which I look at mine, I hadn't noticed it. I didn't see what he saw. So, and you've heard me talk about it. I harassed getting my accounts receivable under control. I hired somebody to come in, and they trained with my staff, and I still to this day weekly look at my accounts receivable and ask questions. So I still to this day do that. So he saved me a bunch of money there, then accounts receivable. And recently he noticed, which we'd already noticed it, but still the cost of goods sold percentages had inched up. And so that's what we've been doing right now, is we've really been harassing how to figure out why our cost of goods sold is up. And actually, it's every category is what it looks like. But contact lenses were an issue. So I think what's funny is, and then we had a cash flow problem earlier in the year, which is not uncommon in February, as you know, and when all the expenses from December comes in. Yeah. But he looks at our books and said, "You're doing fine." It's like, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
It for me personally, it's just a matter of like somebody who really knows how to look at numbers, and he does all kinds of weird stuff with them, and then he tells me I'm okay, then I can kind of put that aside and not worry about that part and keep moving forward. So for me, a lot of it is peace of mind with him. And he also talks to when I needed a loan to when my son needed a loan to be a partner in the practice.
Yep.
He talked to the bank. He actually knew the people at the bank, which was kind of surprising. He knew the woman we were working with. And so he talked to them and talked them through our numbers and everything for us to be able to get the loan. He talks to my accountant about how to handle certain situations financially so that it for tax consequences. So he actually works with my accountant too. So he knows what he's talking about, and I don't know what he's talking about a lot of times. He knows what he's talking about. I feel like and the other thing I've had him do is we're starting to do some rental properties and stuff like that. He evaluates those for me, see if they're a good idea or not. Of course, he told me not to buy the one I did downtown. I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. He goes, that's okay, as long as you know that wasn't a good idea. I'm like, well, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it differently. So for me, it's been worth the money, but it's not cheap. And these are cheap.
That's not really like a CFO in your mind, but certainly it's somebody that gives you some insight that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, consultants. A lot of, like somebody wrote me, I said something about one of my consultants. I've been responding to an email, and somebody said, and someone wrote me, I won't say who, said, you have consultants? And I'm like, yeah, I've always had consultants, and I have multiple. He's a financial consultant, right? I have somebody else who's an optometry consultant. I've hired power practice in the past. I've had optical consultants. I've had 2 or 3 different ones in that world. And of course, Alex Martin has done consulting for us too. And I'm always have consultants. I can't imagine thinking that I know more than everybody else about everything. I think I know a lot about a lot of stuff, but I don't know everything about everything, right?
Well, I mean, people just give you a different peek inside. I mean, that's obviously that's one of the things I think about with the podcast. I think people, a lot of times, like I know there's a lot of stuff I don't know about, but there's a lot of things I know enough about because I get to talk to people that, and obviously we hire consultants as well, but a lot of this is just I get to kind of get a peek behind the curtain about what other people are doing, which is insightful. And it helps you kind of understand, well, what's a different way I'm not looking at this problem, or even the whys behind why we do things that I'm not thinking about. And that's the power of that. And that's, I think, really the power of a COO or a CFO or a CEO. So then when you think about a COO, a Chief Operations Officer, that's kind of a lot of what we would think of as a manager, right?
100%. When I was doing that lecture and preparing it, and I listed all the things a COO does, I went, oh, that's my manager. So I asked her, I said, do you want to be called a COO or do you want to be called a manager? She said, oh, I want to be a Chief Operating Officer. So now we call her our COO and not our manager anymore because she's legitimately a Chief Operating Officer, which I think one of the pieces of a Chief Operating Officer is making sure, first of all, that the trains run on time, right? But it's also implementing the strategies from the CEO. That is a big part of the COO's job, is input and all that kind of stuff, because she's definitely part of that team, but COOs implement your strategy. So when you have the picture and the vision, you decide how to do it, she makes sure it gets done. Now, do I still remind people and still have part of it? Absolutely. You never abdicate everything. To me, you can't have a manager and just abdicate everything. That's not how it should work. It doesn't work, honestly. Or I guess it can if you have a perfect manager, but
do you think elevating just the title of your manager to a COO, does it demand more dollars than you pay your manager, or does it actually provide that person with almost a different sense of responsibility that is beyond what they would expect as like, oh, I'm a manager. I'm a manager of Exclusively Eye Care, as opposed to I'm a COO of Exclusively Eye Care. Not knowing much about C-suites, to me, that would seem that would be like a pretty cool perk for somebody to have. at least a title for them to have it. And a lot of times, I think there's this aspect, at least somewhat, of you have to earn your title. But then when you have a title, you have to continually earn it over time. And I think that's that. So what do you think about those two ideas?
So in her case, obviously she earned the title of COO because I was looking at the list and she was already doing them. And I showed her my slide and said, I think you're doing all these things. And she goes, yeah, pretty much, that's me. And I said, you want to be a chief operating officer? And she thought that was the coolest thing ever. Did she get a raise then? No. She was already doing all those things. I will say, because, I talk to doctors a lot about, I get questions all the time as a group, but also just individually about problems they're having in the office. I will say that I have seen so many times where somebody, like what I had happen to me, promoted somebody from within and then the problems arose. What is it called? The Peters principle, where you promote somebody up to their level of incompetency? It's called, yes. I think that's what it's called, right? Yeah, so you just keep
the principal name, but I
think I might be wrong about the name, but I think that's right. But it's kind of like, oh, this person was a great desk person. Well, let's make her a optician. Oh, she's great at optician. Let's put her in the lab. Oh, she's great in the lab. Let's make her a manager. Well, she has absolutely no management training whatsoever. And I will say with my manager, I've sent her to a lot of different things, and we've done books together. And review, but I've coached her pretty much weekly for now 8 years, 7-8 years, and so it's not like she already had that coaching before she became manager for a couple of years, and then I made her the manager. But a lot of people hire from without. I mean, there's not one way to do this. You know that. I think a lot of it is sitting in front of you. Like, what's your opportunities? If you don't have any. I don't have anybody else in the office that could do what she's doing. There is nobody I would promote from within if she left me for any reason, which she better not. She won't. No way. Can't happen. But there's not a single person that I would even consider putting in.
Open up your. You have to find somebody from without.
You know what I'd probably do? To be honest with you, I'd probably go back to my old system. I'd probably create the matrix method. And get her jobs off to different people in the office. That's probably what I would do. I can't imagine hiring from without, but I know people do it very successfully. I know Oliver Lee did it. When he first got his manager, he hired from without, and he said it was the best movie he ever made. And he was probably around $3 million when he did that. I'd have to ask him, but I'm pretty sure that's about where he was when he first hired a manager. I think the manager he has now might have been somebody who moved up that was inside the office. But he is a huge believer in getting a manager at a certain level in your practice.
What kind of talents do you think, when you think about a COO, what would you look for either internally or externally that would tell you, like, this person has the capability and the drive to do this?
That is, so if I didn't know my own person, I would think it would be somebody with a powerful personality, very independent, kind of a forceful personality, type of smart, obviously, and independent. And that's really not who my COO is. My COO is a very peaceful personality. She's a team player, huge team player. But she for some reason, she had the desire to do this. And peacefuls are, very flexible personalities, and they can, if they decide they want to do something, they can do it, right? Especially if they have a mentor or a coach, which is what I think I've done for her. And it's not easy for her to deal with conflict. I mean, conflict is tough for her. And, but she's smart, and she wants to learn, and she cares. So I don't know that there's a one type. And I see managers from other offices, and usually it's more that stronger personality.
Yeah.
I think that in our practice, having someone who is very beloved was really important, and she is very beloved. She is definitely like everyone's best friend. She's the most empathetic human that ever walked this earth. And I think for my office, with me, that was super important, because I don't always come across that way. I think they know I care, but they don't feel it. With her, they feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what's interesting to me is that there seems to be this kind of ebb and flow within a practice. And you sort of made a comment about, well, if she left, God forbid, if she left, you would probably divvy up her duties. Well, that seems to me to say that maybe she's not necessary, but I don't think that's what you're saying. I think what you're saying is what I see happen is you hire somebody that you watch do different things, and then it gives you clarity on the things that need to be done when they do them well. And is there any truth to that? Or because here's where I felt like when we let our last manager go was exactly the same reasons that you said. It was right before COVID, actually, right before COVID. And she was creating more problems than she was solving. So I was having to put out fires in the middle of clinic, which is like, what is going on here, you know?
Yeah.
And she'd been with us for a number of years, and she had a couple blow-ups at people that were just completely unwarranted, not how we treat anybody ever. And so that kind of started it, and it just sort of steamrolled. And, you know, it's too bad. I like her as a person. I hope she's doing really well. I'm sure she is. But then once that was like, well, I'm going to hire somebody else because I see all the stuff that she was doing. And really, when you look at like what she was doing can be done by other people. But yeah, does it maybe adds more clarity, or maybe it's, I don't know, but you made the same comment, and that's sort of what I'm feeling now is like, we're kind of getting to that close point. What you're talking about is like, all right, maybe we do need to have somebody else to really guide when Chris has all these other wild ideas. Like, let's corral those ideas and focus them and then put them into play.
It's hard for you to put those things into play. Yeah. It's hard for you to put them into play. I mean, I think you're seeing patients, you've got all your eye code, you got all these different things. It's really difficult to make something happen. I still do that some, mostly with doctor things. There's one little thing we're trying to implement right now. Oh my gosh. Getting all 9 doctors to do this one little thing at the end of the exam, which takes seriously 5 seconds, has been, matter of fact, I kind of I wouldn't say blew up at them. I expressed my disappointment.
What's the one little thing?
I could.
I know it.
Okay, I created this really cool, it was 5 ideas that they had, right? But it was also some things I was working on with the opticians that wasn't working well. But I created this tariff sheet that explains what lenses are. So in other words, if we're prescribing the Verilux XR, it has a little description of what a Verilux XR is, so the doctor doesn't have to do it. Because my doctors aren't always saying, oh, it's the best progressive on the market, it does this and that, or the track has the widest mirror. I mean, they don't do that. I know they don't do that. I wasn't very good at it either. And so I wanted this, all I have to do is check what they prescribed, what they recommended. That's it. And it's really well done. I did it, but my husband designed it. So it looks,
I know. That's what I said. I'm sure it is. I've seen it.
It looks amazing. It's exactly, and I use their input on everything and how to do it in the tariff sheet. And getting them to do that with every patient, I have been working on it for probably 3 weeks now. And then this week I went, I don't understand. Help me understand. So I was telling them in a 9-doctor practice, implementing something is difficult. And when I can't implement something that small, that simple, with me reminding you every single day for 2 days, and I've explained the why and what we're trying to accomplish with it, which is increase capture rate, have patients understand what they're getting, not call back to say, what did I just pay for, in the opticians training, so that they're all using the same language too, right out front. So the doctors and everybody's using the same language to describe the lenses. Those are all really important, right? And so I've explained all that. And but this week at our doctor meeting, I went a little so let me explain it.
Why do you think they're not doing it? If it's that simple, why do you think they're not?
I don't know. I don't know. That's why I said, help me understand. And all they said to me was, we'll do it. They wouldn't tell me why they weren't doing it. It's just not a habit. But I've reminded them 2 times a day the first week and once a day the second week. I feel like I've done my part to try to help make it a habit.
Do you think it's about belief? Do you think it's about belief that they kind of think it's
It might be. Yeah.
yeah, like it's the best, but patients are probably going to be okay with the other stuff. Maybe they're going to have a not as good of an experience, but it'll be acceptable.
Correct.
Do you think it's just not this like core belief? I wonder about this a lot, and I think it's I hesitate to underscore everything with this idea, but like when I think about Laurie Sorrenson, or I think about anybody that's wildly successful in their business, or even in eye care, like they can't turn away from something because they have this core belief. So how do we get our teams? This is almost like a separate conversation, but we're going to use it on this one anyway. It's like, how do we get our teams to understand to have that belief? Because if it's true that this is the best thing for the patient, and you do want what's best for the patient in terms of visual experience, then you have to build in systems that result in outcomes, are highly likely to result in outcomes that will translate into what that patient needs, which is the best vision or the best outcome from a glaucoma standpoint or dry eye standpoint, whatever it is. But if you don't have that core belief, then all those processes that surround the belief will fall apart because it's not like I have to make this work.
So you know what you just did for me? You know what you just told me? You just put a mirror up to me and said, it's not their problem, it's your problem. You have not done a good enough job explaining why. I thought I had, but obviously I haven't, right? I think you just, nailed it.
I think you're right. I think it is your problem. But I think what you have to figure out is how do you get them to have the same belief that you have? Because until they do, then it's going to be just something that Laurie's wanting me to check off, and she's going to get mad at a doctor's meeting about it, and
Correct. I feel like I'm pretty good at that because I'm pretty passionate, and I feel like with the staff, it works better. I can usually get them on board easier than I can my doctors. I think 9 doctors are just, and as you know, like the optician group's a little harder too, a little bit more independent minded. The doctors are very much so. And for years, I had a small group of doctors who were always on board with anything I wanted to do. They bought, I think because we were smaller, but also they just believed everything I said. Like they just really trusted my instincts and what I wanted to do. And I have a much bigger group, right? Bigger group now. Yep. And younger generation. We're dealing with millennials. These are all millennials now. The next set of group is all millennials. And I'm just having more trouble with that. I think I'm having more trouble getting them exactly on the same page with me. Well, but they do it because I said so versus they do it because they believe in it. It's just like what you said.
Maybe there's an activity that you've got to run. I mean, we run these activities a lot. I mean, within ICO, we consult with practices, but maybe there's an activity that you can run at a doctor's meeting that just gets at give me a core belief you have about yourself. Ask them, what do you believe about yourself? So, what you're trying to get them to do, and I think optometrists struggle with this, is I think there's this problem with the idea, and I've talked about on the podcast before, is, I'm just an optometrist.
Oh.
You walk around with the idea of I'm just an optometrist. There's a ton of stuff that you do that nobody else can do, not nearly as well as you can. But if that's what you think about yourself, then you're always second guessing whether it's the value that you're providing, whether it is the diagnosis that might be a little bit uncertain, or the treatment that might be a little bit uncertain, although it can be relatively assured that it's the best course of action based on what you have, and the information that you have is likely going to be as good or better than anybody else. It's just that you're not comfortable with managing the uncertainty, and you don't have the belief that you got to be the guy or the gal. And so what kinds of activities could you do that would kind of get at that any belief that they have about themselves very strong, trying to figure out what is that one thing that you believe about yourself that you hold very strong, meaning that if you see this line in the sand, you will not cross it because of that specific belief. And it might be political. I mean,
And it might be political that does not agree with you. But it might be like, look, I will never donate to Republicans or Democrats because whatever, right? Well, why do you have that belief? Like, Republicans are bad or Democrats are bad, whatever it is, right? But like, trying to use a belief that they hold so strongly about themselves, not necessarily about their faith, but about themselves, and maybe it does do with faith. But like, how did they form that belief? And then you really got to figure out, well, like, why don't they hold that same belief as, like, do you believe? I mean, it's simple as, well, Laurie, do you believe that your exam and refraction is worth more than $65? You would say yes. Well, do you believe it's more than $250? Well, then you say, okay, it's worth $250. Is it worth $1,000? Is your exam and refraction worth $1,000? And I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm saying there's probably a situation where if you held that belief and you really believed it, you would make it true. And I think that's where you got to start working with them on, because it'll help them figure out what's the belief that they need to execute what you want them to do.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective at all. Yeah,
Laurie, you're not going to fail. Your business is not going to fail. And it's not going to fail because you won't let it fail. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Yes, we're dealing with a lot of stuff right now, but yes.
Yeah, like, can you give me 2 or 3 strong beliefs? I could probably put them on you, but like, if I said, like, what do you believe about yourself that is like to your core, what would you say about you within the profession?
That I'll figure it out. That's probably my number one thing, is I'll figure it out. Like, just COVID, like, yeah. I can figure this out. I can read legislation. I can read the law. I can read the rules. I can read what's happening scientifically as well as anybody else can, so I can figure it out. So I can do it. And I'll make it work one way or another. If this doesn't work, I'll do this. If that doesn't work, I'll do this. So I think that's where a lot of my stuff comes from, is like, we were supposed to have an expansion in front of our building, and they're going to take over some of our parking. So I don't know, and the state was supposed to come negotiate with me in January. Hadn't heard anything until 3 days ago. And so I don't know if I'm moving, which means building a whole nother building. Yeah, think about that one for a second. At my age, seriously? Or can I negotiate with them to get some more land next door, this was my goal, and build a really cool parking space for my staff and all that. So all these different things in the air, but I found that yesterday it's on hold again. Like, the state ran out of money, so they're not expanding, and we have no idea when it's going to happen. So I'm like, okay, go back to what I want to do, which is expand our building, remodel our break room, remodel our area, remodel my office, my CMO's space, do all that stuff, and I'm just going to do it. And I'm like, what the heck? I'll figure it out. If they come back in a year and say, oh, no, we're moving forward, I'll figure it out then.
So but you certainly could have that belief system about yourself that you'll figure it out before people. So what I would encourage you to do is try to figure out, like, how far back do you go? What things did you have to do in order to reinforce that belief that you will figure it out? Because I believe you will. And because you have that belief, you have to put systems in place so that if something fails here, you'll be able to get to the next step so that it goes there. Because if you fail here, if you fail in one aspect of it, then your belief about yourself, it's not just about the fact that something failed. It's that now, well, my belief is wrong about me. Wow. And that's like really powerful. It's a very powerful driver to doing the next thing, to figure that thing out. So what I would say is, like, you built a lot of things over time in small steps that a lot of your young associates have not had to build yet. But how do you get them those small steps so that they can continue to develop those beliefs and then also execute on that realm? I think is probably the activities that you want to try to do. And maybe it's even just purely about, like, what is the most important thing to you? Like, forget this nice fancy tariff. But maybe you ask them, hey, young doc, young millennial, what is the most important thing for you when you are thinking about patient care? Like, what is your core belief about what you do with that patient that drives you, that motivates every single other action? And they won't have an answer. I don't think they will. I think it's really going to try to dig, like, Wait, well, is it just that you want to have a nice take-home paycheck? Oh, good. If that is, like, it might not be the best job for you. You know, this
Correct.
might not be you can make a lot of money doing a lot of other things. So what is it? You know, and I think that sort of exercise would be really helpful, I think.
Okay.
Because then if you understood that, then your tear-off sheet becomes like, if you really can find that pinpoint for every single one of them, it's like now that tear-off sheet's like, well, Chris, you told me that the most important thing for you was to make sure that you have a trusting doctor-patient relationship. And now you're not convincing me that I need to do this tear-off sheet so we can sell the best products and give the patients the best vision. It's how do we make sure that trusting doctor-patient relationship is like flowing through that checkoff sheet form, right? Well, your patients aren't probably, now you're speaking to me as like, well, your patients aren't probably going to trust you very much if you just think that it's all the same. And then they think, well, when you are doing a tear-off sheet, you're going to come across as being salesy. So how do we make that tear-off sheet work for your belief about what you're doing? That's how I'd probably go about it.
Okay.
Sorry. Maybe that's totally off the wall.
That's okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But it has become more difficult to really know your docs when you've got 9 of them now, right? It's the relationships are a little different. And that's one reason why Eric really steps in a lot, because he's much closer to the millennial group. And I'm, of course, probably close, although I'm pretty close to some of them. I'm pretty close to them, too. But it's just a different, he's friends with them. I mean, they hang out. They're socialized. Like, they're buds. They were actually, the entire millennial group was at my house all weekend, partying.
What do you think drives them? What do you think? I think I'm far enough removed that I don't know what drives them like I knew what drives my peers.
I don't know either. I think money is a really big deal in their world. I think the student loan debt is something. Actually, one of my doctors already paid off his student loans. He lives very, 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 very frugally. You should see his car. It's the worst one in the parking lot. Yeah, and he's been out. I mean, he's 34 years old. And so he's been out for a while. And he's actually about to have a baby. And yeah, so.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. He's actually I just gave him my snoo. You probably don't know what a snoo is, do you?
No. That's a snoo.
It's the new most expensive bath mat on the market. But it promises to make your baby. Yeah. Promise to make your baby sleep on average an hour or more a night. So
okay,
it's but it only works for a few months. So I already have to give away my snoo. So he's getting it.
Congratulations to him. That's awesome.
Yeah. Lost my train of thought now.
No, about what drives millennials.
Yeah.
Your younger doctor.
So I keep saying money because I do think there's a big part of it. Because 2 of the millennials we hired, they were working somewhere else and making very good money. So usually most people will jump at the chance to work in my office. I mean, it's a nice office to work, lots of staff, lots of equipment, pretty, well known. I mean, it's like, and they had to think it through. Both of them did. And it was from a financial standpoint. And they actually make more money now than they did in their other place, but they didn't have it. I don't have that guaranteed, right? They have to earn it, create it, whatever. And
have some skin in the game.
Yeah, they have to see enough patients and do things the right way and be a part of the system and all that, and which they have, and they actually do make more than they did before, but they weren't sure of that, and so both of them took a while to make that decision to come in, which I'm not used to. I'm used to like, please hire me, but we don't have much turnover, so it's only just been growth. We've just had growth. I haven't lost a doctor in. She went to work. Last one was she went to go work with her husband, and it was like 6 or 7 years ago.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so let's say parting words. I mean, we've kind of gone all over, and this is how I this conversation.
I don't think you have a title for this one.
No, I'm not sure we do, but I would want to kind of wrap it up with one last thought of okay, well, how do we assess the next thing? Like, if you're going to leave parting words, how could the listeners kind of assess when I'm thinking about how my practice needs to grow over time? Where would be the core places you'd look to say, this is the solution I need to sort of seek out? How do you go about doing that?
Well, that's a whole, probably a whole nother talk, which is my big thing, is efficiencies.
Yeah.
What can you get rid of? I'd say, what can you get rid of more than anything else? What are you doing that you don't need to be doing? Like, you can't grow if you're doing stuff you don't need to be doing. What is everybody in your office doing they don't need to be doing? I think eliminating, are you asking too many history questions? I mean, everything. Are you getting too much information from the patient? Are you doing tests in the exam room that are just because you learned them in optometry school? Are you, all of those things, there's eliminations, number one, before I think you can take the next step in your practice. And then, of course, the next step is simplifying everything and automating everything. That's eliminating, in my mind, is automating, because you're taking it away from people in the office. And then just really being creative with your systems on how to give better care more efficiently. I mean, we've got our check-in process down to less than 1 minute. We grew 50%, and we went from 3 front desk people to 2. So, I mean, there's ways to do things like that. There's ways to do that, and it's really hard to go to the next level if you don't really think through, I think, those things. It's a lot of people think they can throw a manager at something and that fixes everything, and I don't believe that's true at all.
I agree.
I just don't think that's true. I think you always want to say systems. What the heck does that mean? I know that doesn't, but it is looking at your entire process through an elimination, simplification, automation, and what I call elevation, which is taking what you have and using it to where it provides money, time, whatever, doing things better with what you already have. If you don't do that, then it's really hard to go to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and even just to boil it down to one other finer point, I think is what, as the doctor, what am I doing that I don't need to be doing that somebody else should do? And what are the things I do now because they're habit, that we don't really even use the information or care about the information. And if we do care about the information, how can we get that information? How can we get a piece of information or a history, or that I can get it quicker, more efficiently, so that I can know who I need to dive into and who it's not even important to go down that road. So I think that was great. Laurie, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And we will probably have to have another follow-up about that, about more efficiencies and better systems.
That's my favorite topic.
All right. Well, we'll just have to schedule you to do it. And,
okay.
Thanks for your time. And we'll probably see you sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I don't know when's our next one.
Probably a month and a half or so.
Yeah, probably. All right.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, Chris.